Okay. Today we're going to do part 2 of our about non-kosher materials. Just to remind you, last time we spoke about 2 groups of items. One is about behemoth tameh, which is about meat and poultry, and included in that, which we're going to come back to today, was fatty acids and glycerin. That was included last time. We're going to come back to last time we talked about it if it's really chafed. Today we're going to talk about a different angle of it. That also included about fish and bugs. And the second half of what we spoke about last time was about dairy products, which was about alav and Venus and soft cheese and whey and all kinds of things that have to do with those kind of stuff. Okay. Today we talk about different other things that could be chafed. And again, the goal here, what we're trying to do here is just give an overview of all these things, like really just touch on these different things, because if in essence, there are less treif things than kosher things, or class of treif things. So if we identify all the treif things, or one can make something treif, then that sort of leaves everything else behind as being kosher, so to speak, which is a way of looking at things. Anyhow, okay, so we're going to go through, okay, so the first is, the first group we're going to talk about are things that have to do with agricultural products. Okay, last time was animal products and dairy products, and now we're talking about agricultural products. Okay, so the first is Akum. Okay, Chazal were concerned that we would interact with goyim and they could lead to intermarriage. So they made they made 3 different yisurim that go along with those, the 3 that go together, and they are things that goyim cook or bake, that's bishul Akum and Akum, that's 2 different yisurim, each with their own twists of how they work. And they also made an issur to wine that a guy touched, because stam yayin, if he was touched it or he poured it, it makes stam yayin. So bishul Akum and Akum are negaya in a house, like when someone's cooking. It's a negaya in a factory if you make food, if you produce food. It's not usually some negaya for a factory for ingredients. Usually ingredients don't come in with bishul or Akum problems. That's not such a common thing. For consumers, of course, it does. I mean, for consumers, of course, hold on one second, I need to zoom out. One second.
Got Shemittah Akum.
Is motor.
They're good, but they approved it.
So say what you want to, like, hold on a second. I've just on my computer here, I'm sorry. Okay, so Shemittah Akum, nothing to do with me. Not my problem. They also asked Gilui and 100 other things that are not negatas. We said last time we're not going to talk about things like Practicum that we're not negatas. Anyhow, so for consumers, for factories, ingredients coming to a factory of bishul and Akum are not such an issue. But things to do with grape, there are loads of them. So we already spoke once about bishul Akum, and we'll talk about it in the future, that bishul and Akum at other times. But grape products, ingredients that come from grape or have questions of stam yayin are all over the place. Where was it? Just this week in tartaric acid is in sugar. Okay, you wouldn't know that that's a question of stam yayin. We hold it's mutter, but it's a question of stam yayin.
Tartaric acid and sugar.
Okay, see, look at that. Yes, there was in this place. They're using tartaric acid in their sugar.
Regular sugar.
No. It's as far as the balancing the pH of it when it's finishing. They use tartaric acid in this place. Okay, so you see like
bottle, right?
Yes, it's bottle, and it's we hold this mutter, but yes, and there are people who don't hold this mutter. Yes, but so what I'm saying is it's all over this. We will one time do a thing just on grape products. There's all kinds of products that could come from grape all over the place that are so to speak ingredient type things. Okay. The next of the agricultural things is things to do with grains. Okay, and so one thing which either you think is very serious or you think is nothing at all is that American Hashgachahs, of all the national Hashgachahs, just about, will give Hashgachah to things that are, even if they contain what we call Chodosh, from the 5 grains, wheat, rye, spelt, oats, and barley, because most Yidden in America are not makbid on that. They'll eat even if food is yoshon. So if someone wants to be makbid, most people eat even Chodosh. And if a person wants to be makbid, or if a Hashgachah wants to certify something as being yoshon, so then there's all kinds of complications. Okay, all things that we have to do. One time, Mitch, and we'll talk about that. What they have to do for doing that. Spelt and rye in the United States are always yoshon. Just the way their planting season grows, they plant it before Pesach and they're harvested after Pesach, so they're always yoshon. But for the other ones, for wheat, barley, and which one time is oats. So then for a Hashgachah, that's something to think about, or a private person to think about what they have to do. One time we'll talk about it.
And a lot of rye is imported from Canada.
I don't know if it's any worse from Canada. Is that true?
This is right.
Okay, could be. It could be. You might be right. Okay. Now the next thing to do with grains is that if a Jewish person owns one of those 5 grains and he makes it into a dough, then there's mitzvah Hafrashas challah. Okay, in order to be chayiv in challah, so yes, I mentioned already, it has to be someone Jewish. It has to start with someone Jewish. It has to have a shir challah, which it's on. It's a shir challah. It has to be that the finished thing that you're going to make is going to have a bracha of zonis or hamoitzi, and it'll also have a Torah lechem. Okay, so that means is to get all those things together. When we usually think about, you think of Hafrashas challah for bread, but of course it means for cakes and pizza and cookies and all those kind of things. Also, assume you have a shir challah. But it means you don't have to be mafresh challah for pasta or for oatmeal. Or this week someone asked about they're making raw cookie dough to specifically put into, well, actually it was last week, raw cookie dough specifically to put into ice cream. And they're not selling it as raw cookie dough that someone's going to bake. Raw cookie dough that's just going to go into ice cream, whose bracha is not a mezorah or hamoitzi. So though you don't have to be mafresh challah, okay, because it doesn't have Torah lechem, or it's not hamoitzi, or if it doesn't have a shir challah. Okay. I think the bracha, I forgot if it's...
So I was being down on that shiloh.
Hey, wait, what bracha is it?
I forgot if it's shak or mezorah. I forgot what the bracha was. I don't remember. Yes, go ahead.
Okay, so I was being down on that shiloh because I'm Pasuk Shalom. I want to be marked by Pasuk Shalom. Something on Shabbos. Be marked by Pasuk Shalom. I buy these ice creams that's cooking dough in it, so I was just thinking, is this a shiloh over here? The Pasuk over here. I decided it's not.
Right. Good. Okay, we're on the same team now.
I was just thinking about that thing, whatever, the OU, whatever, just make sure.
Got it. Okay.
You're definitely sure? Are we definitely sure that it's...
No, that's what I thought. Everybody's thought the same thing also. Have the city.
Let's find that in Pesach.
Yes, well, that depends on what you want to be marked on, you know? It depends which side of the table you sit on that one, you know?
So you said that it's dough. Since it's dough, it's not baked a little bit.
It's not chayiv in challah. I would have to think about whether the pasta or part of it, but I think they go together usually. It's a din in Shin Chav Tes. I just looked it up this week.
So you decided based on it because it's dough.
It says that if you make a thing and you're not going to bake it, with kavanah to never bake it, then it's not chayiv in challah.
What was the content? What they're referring to?
Exactly this kind of case.
Maybe it's a little baked.
Eat raw dough and all these?
I don't remember what it was for. I don't remember what was the case over there.
Maybe it's a little baked, though. I'm just thinking that's what I'm thinking about.
You think maybe it's baked?
It's a drop baked.
Yeah, get rid of the hysteria.
Okay, I don't know. Okay, so in talking about a shir challah, whatever you think you should, let's pick a number. We'll say the shir challah is 5 pounds. Whatever the number is, pick a number. If in a factory, what I'm about to say is not going to get, but that's the Jewish ownership has to be that much. So if he owns the whole factory, so you need, if the dough is 5 pounds, he owns a bakery, it has to be 5 pounds. If he's a partner, let's say he's a 10% partner, and the share is 5 pounds, then it has to be 50 pounds in the batch. For someone who's not Jewish, someone partner with someone not Jewish, you have to have 50 pounds, because the yid's share has to be enough to be chayiv and challah. Okay, when you have the piece that's challah, once you take off the piece, you do the actual Hafrashas challah, you have to burn the piece. Until then, it has the din of Terumah Tmeah. And before your mafresh has din of tevel, both of those, Terumah Tmeah and tevel, both of them you have to kasher if it was put on equipment that was not done properly. If you use the Terumah or you use the tevel, both of them, if you put them on kelim, you have to kasher those kelim.
The whole dough or the part was so fresh?
If you separate a challah, or if you were never mafresh and you have tevel, either one of those, you have to kasher because of that.
Strictly speaking, in the Chutzlaritz, it might be like a chametz distributors, right? It's just a mitzvah on the...
So you can go listen to that share about that. You have to be mafresh. I didn't say you can't. If you're mafresh eventually, you're fine. You could be mafresh after. But like, for example, if you remember this 2 years later, then it's too late to do it.
Kasher the kelim?
You have to kasher kelim, yes.
That's what you're asking?
Yes, I'll point you to the right page in the book if you want. Okay, I shouldn't say. That's how I remember it. Okay, we will look it up afterwards. Okay, when I wrote this, that's what I thought. Okay, we will one day talk about how we do it commercially. Okay, commercially, that's not such a simple thing. That's its own special parsha how we do that. Okay, and this reason, this idea that you have to be mafresh challah from if a yid owns his company is one of the 2 reasons why we track which companies owned by yidden. One is for this, and one is for Pesach. Okay, we have to track if a Jewish-owned company, if they're making potato chips, we don't care. But if they're making something that would be chayiv challah, then we would care for this reason and for Hilchos Pesach, that they shouldn't be chametz of Pesach. Okay. You shouldn't forget, we're talking agricultural things. So bugs we talked about last time. That's very relevant to agricultural things. But okay. Next, the next group of things are things that have to do with time and place. So one I just mentioned to you. I didn't say any. Let's come to time and place. Let's do the place. Yeah, I'm trying to think where I said that. Okay, anyway, it's coming. Okay, so the first like this. The first is a time and place has to do with Pesach. Okay, that for come Pesach, there's all kinds of extra rules of what makes food kosher. Okay, that you can't have chametz or kidneys. Okay, you can't eat it, and you can't own it, of course, and have hanaf from it. So wheat and soy and corn and rice, all those things are very popular all over the place. They're used in food chemicals like ethanol, think about like that, vinegar, making fermentations, emulsifiers. So they're all over the place. They're so rampant in what we have that they give Hashgachah for something for Pesach. Just about everything needs to be special Hashgachah. Not everything, but just about everything. And because it's so complicated, the general rule is that we only give Hashgachah for Pesach or Hashgachah Shemittah. Okay? Not everything. There are some exceptions to that. There are some things that are always kosher Pesach, like a company I went to this week that's kosher Pesach all year round, not under our certification, which was actually not kosher Pesach when I was there. But I'm not going to say. But I'll tell you,
It was only around, but was not kosher.
right? No, it was so simple that it was going to be kosher Pesach that they certified with that a Mashiach Tmidi. Usually Pesach says it's kosher Pesach, always Mashiach Tmidi. Here they let it without it, and in fact it was not. But anyhow, that was like a weird exception. But usually things of Pesach are Hashgachah Tmidi is because of all these complications.
It wasn't a matzah company, right?
It was not a matzah company. No. Mitzvah next week under a matzah company. But if I get in. Okay. Another thing is, another thing about Pesach is that not only you're not allowed to eat it, but if a yid owned it over Pesach, it's chametz over Pesach. Okay? So for people who own a house, in your house, you care about that, of course. If you own a store, you have to care about that. Or you have to get rid of your chametz or do mechira chametz before Pesach, so you shouldn't be over in Bal Yirah. If you're over, not just for your personal isser, yes, of course, you don't want over the isser, but also the food's going to be us afterwards. Okay? So two things have come up with that in recent years, have to do with this shayla. And one is the one that was like sort of more personal to the CRC is that we came across this whiskey manufacturer who's a Jewish person. He owned this huge whiskey company, and it's the whiskeys that he makes are made with chametz, and they're made with chametz and they're aged for many years. So automatically he owned every one of them over Pesach. Okay, with other things, if he made cookies, we wouldn't be so worried. It would just be a certain amount of time after Pesach. Here it's whiskey, so it's that was a more serious shayla. It wasn't so relevant to the vodka and gins because those tend to be not made from chametz and they're not aged. But for the whiskeys, that was a whole to-do, as you may well remember. That's one thing. The second thing is that most food manufacturing companies, the people who actually make the company, aside from this case, by and large, they're not Jewish owned. You don't have to worry about chametz on Pesach. And in stores, people are sensitive. They know the store that they shop in. If it's owned by a yid, they have to make sure that they sell the chametz. Okay, but what's come to light is this idea that there are distributors who are Jewish, and they distribute a lot of chametz, a lot of everything. Okay, so now it turns out like this: when the distributor, if the distributor is Jewish, so the question is, when I pick up a box of pretzels, a bag of pretzels after Pesach, am I getting something that the distributor owned on Pesach or not? Okay, so to try to explain to you, I see 5 variations for how that could happen. Okay, for what could happen, what the shayla is. Okay, we have to figure out who owns this chametz. The story we're talking about here is the manufacturer is not Jewish and the store owner is not Jewish, and the only person who's Jewish is the distributor. Okay, that's the question we're dealing with. So I'm going to give you 5 cases of who owned the chametz when. Okay, so in this case, the chametz is the simplest case. The chametz is in the store already before Pesach. Before Pesach, the store already had it. So he had it before Pesach and on Pesach and after Pesach, but it's not owned by someone Jewish. Okay, so the din is that it's fine. It's mutter. No problem. It was owned by someone who's not Jewish, so Pesach. What? That's the easiest case. Okay, that's the first case. Okay, we'll move along. And the next case is it was owned by the distributor before Pesach, and he sold it to the store on Pesach. Okay, so in this case, he owned it before Pesach. And he sold, means is that the third day of Pesach, he sold it to the store. So in this case, even if the distributor did a mechiras chametz, by selling the chametz on Pesach, he was over on Bal Yirah by doing that. He retook possession of it. He for sure was over on it. So in that case, it's going to be usher. Okay? When he distributed on Pesach, even had he done a mechiras chametz before Pesach, in the middle of Chol Hamoed, he went and sold it to a store. So and the store is not Jewish. Why are you making faces?
I don't know, that's true.
Because
He sold it, so it's not his. So he sold something which is not his. He was ever there.
okay, so Rav Moshe in the famous Tshuva who talks about he says, but if he sells it on Pesach, then it's usher. Rav Moshe, now the case Rav Moshe is talking about, the Wallbounds case, is it's a supermarket. So if he sold it on chametz, the person who bought it didn't care about chametz and Pesach. That person didn't care. The person says that does not negate us. But of course, he says it would be usher. But that's because he was talking about a supermarket. So the person who buys cookies on Pesach doesn't care about chametz. So we don't care about that person. It's not relevant to Shayla.
He sold something which was not his.
So Ramesh says no, but the act of selling it is a stealing back from the guy. He's stealing it back from the guy. So because he first of all, so he took repossession of it, and because he's chayv achrayas, he says for sure, he says it's usher at that point. Okay, that's our second case. Okay, you can think mull that one over. Now the third case is the distributor. The distributor. I don't know what's going to happen to this case. I see something wrong here, but anyhow, okay. The distributor had it before Pesach, and he kept it on Pesach. Okay, he kept it, and he just gave it. He sold it to the store after Pesach. Okay,
and it was sold over Pesach.
so the distributor.
It sold to the guy over Pesach.
So now, why?
After Pesach.
No, he sold it. He wants to have a mechiras chametz. So now it's going to depend. Okay, this case is a depend case. Okay, the distributor sold it to the store after Pesach. Okay, so now what this?
Going back to case B, there was a mechiras chametz or not?
Yes, there was. Even if there, I said even in case even if there was a mechiras chametz, since on Pesach he sold it. The Gemara says in that case it's usher because this act of selling it makes it usher. Okay, case C is he sold it to the store after Pesach. Okay, so the distributor had it from before Pesach and he kept it through Pesach. And then he sold it to the store after Pesach. So here, there's two parts to think about. One is, did he have mechiras chametz? Okay, if he had a mechiras chametz, that would be one thing. So mechiras chametz if he didn't have mechiras chametz, it would be, of course, no good. Second, if he had mechiras chametz, then there's the question is, does that help? He ran his business like usual, so Rav Moshe says it's okay. Other people were not so thrilled about that. So that's a question. In that case C, should it be mutter or should it be usher in that case? Okay.
Sorry, I didn't follow. So what's the shayla?
The distributor is Jewish.
Okay.
He owned chametz on Pesach.
But I think he said he sold it.
He had mechiras chametz. So first of all, he had to have mechiras chametz. Not every distributor has mechiras chametz. Okay. The second thing is, not everyone agrees with what Moshe said. That if a guy has mechiras chametz and then he runs his business like regular, does that invalidate the mechiras? Does it show that
even stuff he didn't sell?
Even though stuff he didn't sell, that's good.
If he had a proper mechiras chametz, then it's fine.
No, maybe I wasn't being clear. He had mechiras chametz and his business ran like usual. He was buying and selling, everything was running like
He
everything.
sold the business, the company to a guy.
Yeah.
Had to manage it, so that's for sure fine.
So
He has a good type of material.
if he does a really,
More specific.
so it depends. Not everybody's even about that stuff, but it depends. So there's a lot of variables over here. That's why it's great. If a lot of
If they're done
variables,
correctly.
then maybe that should be okay. Yes, okay. Yes, that's great. So it's a fuzzy case. It depends on a lot of variables over here and position. Okay, case number D. Okay, the manufacturer the distributor didn't get it till Pesach. Okay, they got a delivery of Cheerios on Pesach. So General Mills owned it before Pesach, and on Pesach the distributor finally got it. So in that case, it's similar to case B, where it's even better than case B, where it's also because here it's not even covered by the mechira. Even if he had a mechiras chametz, he got it on Pesach. It's not covered by the mechira. You can't sell it if you didn't own it yet.
You paid for it before Pesach.
So that's a fuzzy. That case is a fuzzier case. Rav Moshe would have said for sure it's not okay. Again, for the other cheshbon here, what's it?
It's clear that it's not going to work. I mean, the starters say it's stuff that I'm getting.
So there are those who say that it's hard to understand. How do you sell something that you didn't buy yet? It's a question. It's hard to understand how that could work. There are people who think like that. I thought this is more traditional. Again, Rav Moshe who says if you sell it on Pesach, for sure would say in this case. The act is in itself taking
But how does it work? I'm getting somebody orders something, right, and it comes on Pesach.
Then what?
What?
Then what's your question?
So, I'm just,
Do you think
somehow I'm not Iker.
if a box of Cheerios shows up,
Yeah.
who'd say that? You don't feel like you want to be Iker, but that doesn't mean that's the truth.
So what do you do? What do I do? What do people do?
You don't order Cheerios to show up on Pesach. What can I tell you?
No, and
Or you don't. You're not going to when it shows up at your door.
Okay, so if a guy did Mechira,
He doesn't care anything. He's running his business. He doesn't care about Pesach. Sorry,
It's not
what's the Mechira? What's
Yes, of course.
the work?
If the distributor was a Arlah, he closed his store for Pesach.
As much effort as he put into Mechira, and he wants the benefit of the Mechira, that the stuff shouldn't come also, right? So
you mean when it shows up and the guy comes out with a forklift and takes the pallets off from his neck, he's like, "No, I'm not behind here. It's not mine. It's not mine."
I did a proper mechira that's owned by a guy.
I don't know. Maybe the reason is because bittul. Maybe it's a bittul you need to. Then I hear it. And this guy didn't do bittul. He just did mechira. And maybe.
Okay. Last case is if the manufacturer had it from before Pesach and he had it on Pesach and he didn't sell it to the distributor till after Pesach. Excuse me. So then in this case it's mutter because it wasn't by Yid until after Pesach. Okay. So.
There are more cases. There's more variables.
Okay, in my imagination, these are the cases I came up with. You can come up with more. Originally I only had 4. Then I came up with a 5th. There's maybe a 6th afterwards. I'm okay with that. But so So I'm showing you this first, I'll just go through the cases, but also, it's really more than that. And really it is like this. That means that when I walk into the store and I know the distributor was Jewish, there's a very big shiloh. What is the box that I'm holding? I'm holding this box of Cheerios now in my hand. Which was this case A, B, C, D, or E? Which case was it this box that I'm holding? I have no way of figuring out who owned it at which point. Okay, so that in itself adds a layer of suffix to this thing, which is Rasim Rabbanan. Okay, so some Rabbanan says it's a suffix Rabbanan. There's no way you could figure out whether the Cheerios are mutter also. Because look, there's some green boxes and some orange boxes in there, and there's gray boxes. There's everything in there. So the box that I have, I can't figure out which one it was.
You don't know the distributor's Jewish either.
No, see, let's say we know the distributor's Jews. So we find out that I live in this place. No, there are people who.
There's 10,000 products in this company.
There are people who know in this neighborhood, this city, this is who distributes. So I know, I got it. Or I know the beer distributor in New York before he got his yoshon, before he got his whatever, his babka. A babka, before he got his babka, I already knew that he distributed the beer. But who owned that beer over Pesach? So look at all these choices. There's all different variations, and you're going to come up with more of them. So that itself is a layer of suffix that maybe you say something won't go. There were those who thought like that. Others thought not like that. Okay, that's its own.
Well, why not?
I'm not really sure. Okay, sit down. Okay, next. Okay,
This is the one case, where we don't have a choice, where there's, all the products prominently displayed a nice hechsher on the thing.
And it might not be kosher.
Yeah, there's nobody to control it. There's nobody.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah,
That's a good point.
I'm sure there's people out there that, chametz is a big thing about chametz and everything, so everybody knows. But, people say, "What do you mean? Had an extra on that board? Had an extra? Like, what's the?
Yes.
What are you talking about?"
If we had 5 scenarios, they're also.
2 were okay, 2 were not okay, 1 was. Yeah. Depends.
We don't have to rub me by a chart and bars. Scenario, not the scenario.
Okay. Next, another thing has to do with we're in the time and place. If I were to pull you back into where we were, okay, that there's a bit of Arlah for the first 3 years that a fruit grows, only from a fruit tree, not from vegetables. For the first 3 years, the fruit is usher as Arlah. It's only for fruits, and it applies to Chutz La'aretz. But special Allah Sinai that something Arlah b'chutz la'aretz is mutter. So for us, we never think about Arlah because as soon as even there's any fruit out in the market that are mutter, even any suffix that's enough to make it mutter. So it's come out like it has almost nothing to do with us, except if you own a tree in your backyard. Almost we never have a shiloh of Arlah because there's always going to be a suffix Arlah. Is this apple Arlah or is it not Arlah? So no, it's a part of it. It's a suffix. Suffix Arlah b'chutz la'aretz is mutter. Okay.
We certified 2 stores here. How do we take care of Arlah?
So for Chutz La'aretz?
No, imported oranges.
I'm coming one second. I can get there to you. So I said just for Chutz La'aretz. So for Chutz La'aretz stuff, we come out not negated to us, okay? But negated to us is from stuff from Eretz Yisrael. Because in Eretz Yisrael, suffix Arlah is like any other Isser, okay? Which is negated to citrus fruits is a common thing that they export. That's a fruit. That would be a shiloh of Arlah. So now there's a shiloh. How much percentage of a fruit has to be Arlah in order for it to be usher in Eretz Yisrael? Okay? We spoke about this in Hashgachah. Okay, if it's a suffix, at what percentage? Let's say if 14% of the oranges are Arlah in the market, is that mutter rasa? Am I allowed to eat them or not allowed to eat them? Okay,
you know for sure it's Arlah, of course.
I think if it's a suffix Arlah,
right. You know, no idea what's Arlah now.
And you know that in the market 14% are, so that mutter rasa, am I allowed to eat it? Okay, there's 3 big shittas. Some say it has to be more than 50%. Some people say it has to be 10%, like me and Amatzi, that the number comes from. Some people say 5%, okay? We spoke about this in Hilchos Tefillin. But they're all different sheets about how much percentage it has to be.
It's 5%.
5%? It's a good question. We spoke about it then. It's a good question. It's a good question. We talked about it then. And so what happens like this in Eretz Yisrael, there are groups who make charts of all the percentages of Arlah for each fruit. Okay, they say this year, this season, the oranges are this and the apples are this. And all the percentage broken down by all kinds of fruits. And then whatever sheet you like, you fit it into your chart. Okay, you fit it into your chart. So when someone calls up the office and says...
that percentage is what's on the market or...
Yeah, in the market.
Grown.
But how much of the same thing. How much...
They destroy them. Up the alav, they just destroy them.
Oh, I guess they ignored those fruits, I'm guessing. But that's a good question. So like, for example... Someone will call up and say, hi, I just bought persimmons from Eretz Yisrael. Can I eat them? Can I not eat them? We look at the chart and says, okay, this year persimmons are X%, and is that good or is it not good? And we answer based on that, okay? And you said for our stores, the same thing. There are stores where we give Hashgachah to make sure that Terumah and rice is taken from Eretz Yisrael stuff. The same thing for fruits. So if we bang into, oranges from Eretz Yisrael, we do the same thing. We say, look, these oranges, are they mutter or usher based on those percentages? Okay?
It's such a chart that somebody's... Somebody does it, somebody tracks this.
Yeah, in Eretz Yisrael, the groups that put these things together, they're charts of all the fruits in Eretz Yisrael, I guess, whatever the fruits that they sell, and what percentage of each one is Arlah, and then you pick your sheet and you put it into the thing and decide which ones you want to eat or not.
Where do you get this chart?
I have it from, I get it every year or 2 years, I don't know, get it every
You might
year.
be eating Arlah.
What'd you say?
Ultimately, you might be eating Arlah.
So what? And there was, the milk that he drank might have been from a treifa also, but there's a din when you're allowed to eat minyali. I don't know if you had a coffee, was that a coffee or tea?
No, not Arlah.
Hashgachah, so it has milk in it also, so the milk might have been from a treifa, but there's a din. Sometimes you're allowed to eat something, you're not allowed to eat it, okay? So it is what it is, you know.
So they work, the entire non-certified plain fruit market, what the percentages are that it's Arlah.
Correct.
Right. I would imagine within the first 3 years, not so many fruits, not so many trees get fruit. I mean, they obviously take that into.
That's
That's
okay.
something like the count starts over.
Right, because if they replant things. So you should. I'll just throw that in for that part. Is that you should know when they started paying attention to this in Eretz Yisrael, started paying attention to it. They then kept track. I forgot the number. The number might have been 900,000, but I might be. It was some crazy large number of fruit trees that were replanted under Hashgachah to make sure they didn't have to restart their early years. Because there's sensitivity to make sure things don't become Arlah. Because of that, they hundreds of thousands. I've got the number: 700,000, 90,000 trees that were replanted. I'll be in to make it that they don't have to recount the years. Anyhow, okay, fine. Okay.
I wonder. I had these fruit trees. Parents asked these fruit trees were replanted.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder how they know what the shear is. The shear is if enough to live. You have enough dirt to live. You have to recount. How do they find that out?
So I'll point you to my book. I just was writing something about it. I'll point you to it if you remind me afterwards. Okay.
With how long?
Okay. Okay. I'm going to point to you. Okay. Next. We have to finish. So we have a nice thing also. Okay. Terumah, another thing has to do with time and place. What you asked about beforehand. Okay. Something that grows in Eretz Yisrael needs to be mafresh Terumah. Until then, the fruit, the stuff is tevel. If you run it on kalim, you have to cash those kalim. Okay, we actually had that. Okay, it's like whoever thinks about that here in America. One of the things that they export from Eretz Yisrael, it seems they're a big exporter of, is watermelon seeds. Okay, go figure. And we had a company that asked for Hashgachah on their watermelon seeds coming from Eretz Yisrael. So going forward, they were going to get them already had Hafrashas Terumah Meiser. They were going to get it, it was going to be fine, it wasn't going to be a problem. But the stuff they had used previously did not have that, had not had Terumah Meiser taken from it, and it was too late to be mafresh because it was gone. It had been years of it gone. It couldn't be mafresh anymore at that point. So we kashed kelim. That's what we did actually. So in order to be mafresh, to do hafrasha, you have to take off about 20%. The hafrasha is on about 20%, which is you take a tiny bit for truma, then you take off, then you take 10% for meiser, then 10% of that 10% is Terumah Meiser. So far you took off 10% in a drop, and then you take off another 10% either in some years for Meiser Sheni, that's years 1, 2, 4, and 5 of Shemittah's Meiser Sheni, and in years 3 and 6 of Shemittah you take off Meiser Ani, another 10%. So in the end you've taken off, give or take 20% of the stuff has been separated. Okay, but all of that is mutter for people to eat, except for the Terumah, which is the tiny bit you took at the beginning, and the 10% of 10%, which is another 1%, that's also those are Terumah, which is it's tame, you can't eat it, and the Kaihanama tame, you can't eat it. So that one, a little more than 1% ends up being not usable. So you have to discard it or get rid of it. Again, if you put that on your kelim, you have to cash the kelim for that also. And then the rest is okay. Okay, so this is negate to all kinds of things that come from Eretz Yisrael. Carrots, peppers, as you know, going on now, citrus fruits, and then there's things like lemon oil. Okay, lemon oil comes from Eretz Yisrael. That's also chayim Terumah Meiser. Okay. Last in this section is our favorite for this year, is because of Shemittah. Okay, that things that grow during the Shemittah year, like this year, have special din to them. We don't. The American Hashgachas and the Mahadran Israeli ones don't accept the het mechira. So the two big issues that we have to deal with are here in America are svichen, which is vegetables, things that we planted every year, vegetables and herbs and things like that. They're asur if they're Shemitah produce, and kedusha shvius, which is things that grow during Shemitah. Have kedusha shvius. You have to treat them properly. Okay, in Punkt we have a mix of those actually going on right now. The peppers right now, they have kedusha shvius and they're shiloh svichen. They're not svichen, but they're a shiloh. Okay, one day we'll talk about those also. Okay, so last thing we have to talk about is kalim. Okay, so we talked about a bunch of different ways that things can be treif. And all the things we talked about now, I tried to talk about were things that were inherently treif. Like something was shmita, svichen, so svichen is asur. The svichen is asur. And now the last thing we have to talk about is kalim. Okay, and that is, all the things that we talked about are the thing itself is treif. But there's also a whole din of tam kicker that makes it that all kinds of things become treif because they were on the same kalim as those things that were treif. Okay, so for example, you remember, I'm sure you remember from last time this chart of fatty acids. Okay, I'm sure you memorized all those little numbers on there. And this is different oils and fats, and which fatty acids they have in them. Okay, if I can remind you, an oil or a fat is comprised of two parts: is glycerin, and glycerin is attached to 3 fatty acids. And the glycerin is exactly the same for all oils and fats, but depending on the fatty acids, the mix of fatty acids that are there that dictates the properties of corn oil. Why corn oil is different than lard, why it has different properties, a different boiling point, and all kinds of things. It has to do with the different mix of fatty acids that it has in them. Okay, so the fatty acids are considered the more valuable part of these than the glycerin part. Okay, so in order to get a fatty acid, so let's take lauric acid. Okay, so you want to get lauric acid. So if you look on the chart, you see that a really good place to get lauric acid from is from coconut oil. Okay, coconut oil is almost half of the fatty acids in coconut oil are lauric acid. Okay, 47%. It's a great place to get lauric acid from.
How else would you get it?
What?
How else would you? Nothing else has it.
Nothing else on this chart has it, right? So it's in minor pieces on some other things, and maybe another oil that I'm not thinking of, okay? But for us, that's a really common place to get it from is coconut oil. Like you see yourself. You looked at the chart, you said, obviously you get it from coconut oil, okay? So lauric acid should be kosher. It comes from coconut oil. Okay, the problem is, so be'etzim, it's kosher because coconuts are kosher. So coconut oil would be kosher, and the lauric acid should always be kosher. But in fact, we say it needs Hashgachah, because to get the lauric acid out of the coconut oil, you have to do 2 big steps to get it out. Okay, the first is, it's called a splitter. You have to split the glycerin from the fatty acids. I told you, the oil is glycerin with fatty acids. How do you do that? You put it into this huge machine, huge, like 100 feet tall. You put it in this machine that splits it at very high temp, like 800 degrees Fahrenheit, under a tremendous amount of pressure, and it splits the glycerin from the fatty acids. Okay, that's the first thing you have to do is you have to split the glycerin from the fatty acids. Then once you've split them, now you have this mix of fatty acids. Okay, you have this mix of fatty acids, and those fatty acids have to then be distilled. You have to put them through a still so that the lauric acid goes this way, and the caprylic acid goes this way, and the palmitic acid goes that way. You have to divide, you have this now soup of fatty acids, and you have to divide them so that you get only lauric acid as your thing. You have to, so there's a little difference in boiling point between lauric acid and palmitic acid. So by distilling it, you get just one, what's called fraction out, and leave the other fraction go a different way. Okay? So you have this mix of fatty acids, and you divide them into the ones you want to. Now, those two processes I just described, the splitting and the distillation, both are hot, and both could also be used for animal fat. Okay, the same kalim that do that job, in fact, and they are. Coconut oil has a lot of properties and similar to other animal fats, so the same kalim would be used to split animal fat and then to distill the same thing. In animal fat, you're not trying to get lauric acid. You're trying to get, stearic acid out. So you're trying to separate their soup of fatty acids and get out those fractions. So first you have to split it. For all of them, you have to split it, and then you have to distill them. So, Memela, you're going to use the same kalim. So that's why lauric acid is considered that it needs Hashgachah, not because we think it comes from animals. It's really unlikely it comes from animal products. But the reason is because of the kalim that it's made on. Okay? So like, for example, in laundry grade, on this aside thing, things that are non-food use, lauric acid is no problem, because we know it doesn't come from animals. Okay? It's assumed that it doesn't come from animals. Okay, so now, so here's the rule of the short version of the rule of how you break down fatty acids. Okay, fatty acids we would break them down into these 3 groups. There's the short chain fatty acids. Okay, let's have the opposite end on the right end. The long chain fatty acids that have 14, 16, or 18 palmitic and stearic and myristic. What? C is how many carbons there are. The chain, it's a chain of 14 carbons or 12. The amount of carbons, okay, so the long chain ones could come from vegetable or animal fat. Those are the most serious. Okay, those could actually be inherently treif, the ones in the long chain fatty acids. The medium chained are like, you ever see like MCT oil, like medium chain triglycerides? That's what this is. Okay, the medium chains, okay, which is 6, 8, 10, or 12, caprylic, capric, or lauric. Excuse me, those are the medium chain. Those commonly come from coconut oil or some other vegetable oils. And those are assumed to come from a kosher source, but they need hashgachah because the kelim that they're made on, those processes I just described to you, can be done with animal products as well. And then the short chain, the acetic and butyric, the C2s and C4s, those don't come from these things, but they're klal. They come from other processes that don't have such shilas to them, and those are going to be okay wherever they come from. Okay? They can come from animal products, but almost never. So those are okay no matter what. Okay.
What?
Yeah. Okay. What do you say? Well, acetic acid, in this case, we're not talking about acetic acid like you use. I'm talking about in a product, ethyl acetate. So the acetic version of that is assumed to come from this stuff. It's not the acetic acid like as in if someone's using just plain acetic acid. Okay, anyhow. Okay, now, a variation of what I just told you. Okay, when you make corn oil, okay, corn oil, not corn oil for fatty acids, corn oil, just corn oil as it is, okay? So corn oil comes from corn, okay? So what could be wrong with corn oil? Okay, corn oil is corn. It's fine. What could be wrong with that? So inherently it's kosher. The problem is that oils have an odor to them. It's actually a din shulchan aruch about that they have an odor to them, and before they send it to your house for you to cook with it, they deodorize it. They remove odor, they deodorize it. They take out the odor. Okay, the deodorizing is a type of still. Not the same way I described before, but it's a type of a still. What you're doing basically is you're boiling out those fragrances, the parts that you don't like, and you're distilling them out and leaving behind the oil that you do like. Okay, so the deodorizer that you use for corn oil can also be used to deodorize animal fat also. Okay, so the shaila of the reason why vegetable oils and vegetable and seed oils need hashgachah is because of the concern that maybe it was deodorized on cannabis seed oils like I think actually corn may be a seed oil. I mean, whatever, these kind of things is because the chashash is that deodorizing might be happening on kelim that we use for non-kosher. Okay, when I say these kind of oils, that's different than essential oil. Okay, essential oils are you steam to get the essential part of like a herb. Okay, like mint essential oil is you put mint through steam to get the flavorful part out of the mint into an oil rather than having to have the actual leaves. Okay, those are fine. Those don't need hashgachah.
So you're saying the process is different. Corn is crushed, squeezed, as opposed to
corn. Well,
steam.
No, the process is not what I'm focusing on. When you make corn, however you get the oil out of it, sometimes with a solvent, sometimes by crushing. That's not the sensitive part of it. Okay. The problem is once I have the corn oil, I have a container of corn oil, I now have to deodorize it to make it taste better.
So
but I don't do that.
Don't need to deodorize.
Right, they're not deodorized. No, they are actually the odor there is what you want. The fragrance of the mint oil is what you want.
So what's the definition of an essential oil?
An essential oil is when you find something flavorful like rosemary. And you don't want to use the actual rosemary. You want the flavor from that thing. You want the flavor from that, so it's an essential oil. There's a process to get the flavor out of the rosemary, so you can have rosemary oil. Okay.
Opposed to corn oil.
So the corn oil, you want the oil, not the flavorful part of it, so to speak. So
why is it given the name essential?
It's like it's the
you want the ganzazach?
It's an ikar. This is the main part of the rosemary. Rosemary is not because it's so pure; it's nice little leaves. The main part is the oil that's in there. That's the flavor of it. As opposed to the leaf. You don't want the leaf.
The oil is what has the good.
It's what you want. And the oil in the corn also, but it's a seed oil. Like this is, I don't know, this is a seed oil. This is like a vegetable oil, and this is an herb. I don't know. Okay.
Well, soybean oil. No one wants soybeans. You just want the oil.
Well, some people want soybeans, but it's a different thing. Okay, next. Another thing is, there are times that you have something, and you want to get the liquid out of it. You want to dry it out. In order to get the liquid out of it. Okay, so those dryers, as you know, those dryers are things that could be used for kasher and treif also. So an example, just to bring out the case for right over here, is if you had dried hibiscus, okay, like vitamin C, dried hibiscus is made on a really simple dryer it's only used for herbs and vegetable things. So we don't have to worry about those kalim. But if you wanted hibiscus PE, hibiscus powdered extract, that is a liquefied version of hibiscus that was then dried, so there we have a chashash of care. If anything that's dried, as you know, something that's spray dried or drum dried, things like that, we worry about what else was dried on those kalim because they can be used for anything. Okay, two more things. One is, if you have a food that needs to be heated, either to make it edible or to make it not spoil. So then we usually, because I'm trying to finish up, almost two more things. Then we try to finish up, then we need to heat it in order to either make it edible or to make it not spoil. And that, again, could be used for kosher and for treif. So if I make ketchup, and the ketchup has only kosher ingredients, so it's kosher. It's inherently kosher. There's nothing in it. Look at the ingredients; they're all kosher. But you have to cook ketchup in order to make it. So we're concerned that kettle was used for something else that was not kosher. Okay, or if you have canned corn, what's in this? Corn and salt and water. There's nothing treif inherently. There's nothing treif about it, but it's processed on a retort that cooks it. So mamela, what else was put on it? Maybe the thing before it was pork and beans. Okay, so that mamela, it needs hashgachah. Okay, and so that's only when we concern that the retort be used for both. I'll throw in, I'm going to confuse you, that canned fruit is not like that. Okay, and bulk pasteurization, we also don't worry so much about it. Okay, too fast I said that. Okay, next. Last is, we are concerned that tam not only goes into a kli, but goes through the walls of a kli into the steam system. So when we give hashgachah, we think about not only was the kettle used to cook ketchup, and maybe beforehand it was used for something else, but maybe the next kettle over was used for something treif, and it affected the steam system. Okay? So here, there's an interesting twist to that, which is that even though we care about that, and we pay attention to that when we give hashgachah, when we think about things at group one, we don't pay attention to that. We ignore that. That's a good question. Why? But that's pretty accepted. The fact that, maybe in that same plant they were doing something else in their steam system, on the same kalim, yeah, okay, so that they're doing something on the same kalim, they do think about, should we let this be group one when they're in the same kalim? Should it be group one? The fact that maybe the steam system is being used for something else, that's sort of people.
Of course, if we know what certified, you can say, well, it's
I said, you don't give hashgachah. No, well, you say, just ship it to the next company, the next place, then it'll be okay. Okay, so just to wrap up what I was just trying to, my point here is that the inherent things that are inherently treif, there's a very limited scope of them. Okay, we try to map out all the ones we could think of, all the limited scope of things that are actually inherently treif. But this last group, which is things that are made on treif kalim, in my mind, affects many more things than the things that are inherently treif. We don't run into things that are actually treif. Even I listed, 18 of them. I came up with 18 things that could be wrong with something that can make a treif. That's harder to bang into. We don't bang into that so often. But to run into things that are treif because of kalim is a more serious challenge. Now, in fact, on a commercial level, kalim is not such a serious concern. But the evidence is usually not such a concern. But in practice, we are chodesh. We think about that, something made on treif kalim. So I have a feeling that covers more items. There are more items that are affected, that are need hashgachah because of that, than things that are because they're inherently treif.